I hereby call this regular meeting of the King George County Service Authority Board of Directors to order. We will begin with the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. If you're able to stand, please do so. Lord, we ask for your guidance this evening as we discuss the business of the Service Authority. Help us to make decisions that benefit our fellow man and our environment. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Miller, do we have any amendments to the agenda this evening?
Yes, sir. We have two. The first would be that we place on the agenda the consideration of an agreement with the Virginia Department of Health for the ARPA funding that we are to receive, the $5 million. We finally got the letter of agreement, and Ms. Lackey has reviewed it, and our recommendation would be that you place it on there and allow it to be approved as to form for the county attorney to also then negotiate that.
Okay.
The second item that we are asking you to do is we've had a series of unfortunate events that's kind of precipitated the need to move the meeting on the 21st. Not unfortunate events, but democracy is prevailing. The primary is that night, and unfortunately, Ms. Gump, our registrar, needs this building and this facility. And so our recommendation is that you move the meeting to either another location on the 21st or you move it to another date, for instance, like the 22nd. This will also precipitate a request for the Board of Supervisors to also move their meeting. And Ms. Lackey can tell you about the kind of the protocol that you might need to go through if you want to deal with that now, or she can do it at a later point in the agenda.
Might as well do it now.
So procedurally, we have adopted our preliminary rate schedule and advertised that, and the advertisements have already run. However, this is kind of a unique situation because the financial plan the Service Authority adopted in June of 2019 included these rate increases. So there's already been a lot of public outreach and opportunities for public comment. Due to the primary by law recently, and actually just effectively, this is the third in June that the primary takes place, there's a conflict between the location of the primary and the use of this facility. So either the location of the meeting on the 21st could be changed, or the date could be changed in its entirety. So those are at the options of the board.
And if we change the date, would we have to rerun the notices?
I don't believe we would need to run the series of notices, but I believe that we should run at least one clarifying notice. I also, if the date is set after the proposed date, then any prospective person who wanted to comment would be able to physically see that notice if they missed the publication.
Okay. Questions or discussion?
Mr. Chair, I'm fine with keeping the meeting on the 21st and just changing the location so that we could minimize advertising costs.
I'm fine with that as well.
The only thing I wanted to ask is which is the best location so we can help our IT staff not have as much as a burden.
Sheriff or fire? Okay. Yeah, that is true. You have a fire bell going off at the fire station, so perhaps the sheriff's office, 5:30, the 21st.
Okay.
So we would just need a motion and I guess a second for that. Correct?
So, Mr. Chair, we could just adjourn. When we adjourn, we could
Oh, yeah.
adjourn to that location, but we do still need a motion to amend the agenda to add the VDH ARP $5 million funding agreement.
Right.
So moved.
Okay, motion's been made. Second?
Second.
Motion been made and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We've been amended. Okay. Moving on, public comment. Anybody in the audience wish to speak this evening? Mr. Dines, do we have anybody online? Okay, thank you. Moving on, report from the member of the boards, Ms. Bender.
Yes, I only have one thing. I'll be reporting on this in the Board of Supervisors. I was requested to serve on another governmental board. This is concerning small renewable energy permits by rule, and why it's important for the Service Authority is that some of these factors with the runoff from solar panels could go towards our nutrients, go towards the count of how much we're allowed to release into the river. So the meetings are supposed to start somewhere in June and go through the summer, and I'll bring back more information once I received it.
So that's a renewable energy board?
Yeah, I'm not going to read it. Pursuant to the Acts of Assembly, Chapter 688, HB 206, the Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, will convene an ad hoc work group of stakeholders to assist in drafting amendments to the small renewable energy permit by rule regulations to address impacts on prime agricultural soils and forest lands within the program. This group will support DEQ in identifying how prime agricultural soils and forest lands should be addressed and identify potential mitigation strategies. And they asked myself, a supervisor from Caroline, a member from the city of Danville, and from Fredericksburg County, and then other stakeholders. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Parker?
No report.
Thank you. Ms. Kupka?
No report.
Okay. I got a couple items. One is just general information for the board. The county has been notified by the Rappahannock Area Health District that they will no longer be testing the swimming waters of Fairview Beach. Since that study done by Hampton Road Sanitation District came back that it was not a human fecal matter causing the problem there. So I only bring that up because, they looked at us and passed for our sewage and stuff in the area. So they will not be testing that anymore. I would like to thank the staff for being on the ball. I noticed a fire hydrant that had been damaged by a vehicle. I contacted the office and I got a reply pretty quickly that said, we're aware of it and we're working on it. So thank you for being on top of things like that. Third item is Monday, myself, Mr. Miller, some of the staff went to a meeting at Draper Aiden along with members of the VDH drinking water group, reference this ARP funding, and we had this agreement to go over later, but it was a very interesting meeting, and I think Mr. Miller will have a little bit more on that in his report. And that's all I have. Consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda as in our packet.
Second.
Motion's been made in second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Report from the county attorney, Ms. Lackey.
The one item I wanted to mention, and if the board's not prepared to give me feedback now, you can also individually contact me. But I looked through some previous agendas, and it looks like prior county attorneys sometimes did and sometimes didn't bring deeds of dedication from subdivisions that are jointly given to the service authority and to also to the county. There is the Oakdale Estates Section 4 deed of dedication. It's on the Board of Supervisors agenda. And if anyone wanted me to speak to that with regard to the service authority, I could. It's an additional section of a subdivision that has been previously approved. So this is a new section, and the convention is that any water or sewer facilities are jointly dedicated to the service authority and to the county.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Oakwood well and septic?
I think that this is Oakdale. Is that what it is? Oakwood?
Oakwood.
Oakwood does not have service authority.
Yeah, I believe they're well and septic.
Okay.
That's the
I
Quality-Built
can
Homes
get
subdivision over there.
clarification from community development on that. It may just be a drafting convention that they go ahead and include the service authority,
Right,
just as a
Oakwood is-
precaution.
But yeah, Oakwood is not a part of the service authority.
Yep, it's not.
Nothing else?
Nothing else to report.
Thank you. Okay, presentations. The April 2022 financials. We have the,
You didn't send a copy. Uh-oh.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and I apologize. I didn't realize I didn't send a copy of this, but after we're finished, if you want a copy, I can make it, but it is posted on the finance web page online. So for the month of April, our revenues totaled $805,148 for a total for the year of $7,192,319. And our expenditures for the month of April totaled $565,561 for a total for the year of $4,887,714. And so that is through the month of April, showing that right now there's between revenues and expenditures, surplus of $2.3 million, but we have some major projects and things that we haven't paid for yet that'll be hitting during the months of May and June. Any questions?
no, thank you, Ms. Hahn. Okay, Water Division report. Who's gonna,
Yeah, that's going to be me.
okay?
Jerry Goldman, our water manager, is on grandbaby watch. So I was nice enough to let him out of this, but I told him that he can't get away with this again. So we have a little, just a little report that we want to do. And obviously, John Eisenbeis had given you a real detailed overview of the maintenance side in previous meetings, and we'll get you wastewater information as well. We'll just kind of try to feature these guys every meeting, once one of these departments, one of these divisions. But so the water department staff 3 operator trainees and 1 manager who holds and that's Jerry, and he holds a Class 1 operator's license. The system consists of there are 9 water systems in the county that are serviced by the service authority, 20 wells. And the wells are divided into what the water department refers to as loops between the 3 trainees. One of the loops consists of only filtered water systems, and the other 2 do not use filtration. However, all 20 wells are disinfected regularly. Typical work week for the water division is as follows. They manage their well loops, or their loops. They do their well checks. They consist of visual inspections at each well. Well pump controls are inspected and operated. The booster pumps are inspected and maintained as needed. Air compressors for the hydro tank systems are inspected and maintained as needed. And each well house has a monthly operations report where daily logs of tank levels, system pressures, well pump run times, and the disinfection levels are reported. And this all goes obviously to VDH and to DEQ on a regular basis as well. The backwater, this is a picture of a filter backwash control panel. Sodium hydrochloride is used for disinfection at all sites. The disinfection is stored in a chemical vat that is regularly checked and filled. The chemical pump is also visually inspected and maintained as needed. The results are posted on the monthly reports. The entire loop usually takes up to 4 hours to complete, depending on what is found at each well, along with maintenance and testing. The operator keep the well houses clean and presentable. Hydro tank maintenance is also needed on occasion. The afternoons are usually spent helping with work orders, rereads, and big maintenance projects. Also, given the need for licensing as required by VDH, time is allowed for study and for the exam. That's an example of a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Obviously, there are times when unexpected water leaks occur or major issues with the line systems happen, and that's when they'll be involved working with the maintenance crews on addressing those things. Obviously, I think there was one last thing I didn't note, that pump failures and power issues are one of the big concerns that we obviously have to deal with. The Tuesdays and Thursdays are reserved for setting aside the water department to primarily focus on helping with distribution issues, work orders, line locates, and the meter reads, customer complaints. The back T sampling and quarterly state sampling are done on Tuesdays and Thursdays. On the filtered systems, filter backwashing is performed on these days as well. These filters are washed once a week or more, depending on the well pump run times. And obviously additional training for the staff is performed on these days as well. That it? And if Jerry were here, we would let you grill him or answer any questions. But Jerry is one of our first-rate employees in the Service Authority. Obviously, was the recipient of the CARE Award for the county. Great guy. He has been very helpful to me in the sense of dealing with the VDH issues, the DEQ issues, and he's right there with us when we're talking with our engineers about some of these capital projects that are related to the water side, and works very closely with the drillers that come out and do their required drilling to keep us going. So he's very dedicated, and if he were here, I'd be saying the same thing. But if there's any questions, I can certainly try to answer them. Or we have Patty is here; she can answer, and John Eisenbeis can answer anything from the maintenance side that might be tied to the water.
And I do believe, didn't they do a field trip today to?
Oh, they did. They went to, is it Smith Lake?
Yes, whatever, Smith Lake, Smith Reservoir.
Yes.
In Garrisonville.
Yes.
So we thank our counterparts in Stafford for allowing our staff to come up and get educated. Any other questions that Mr. Miller can take back to Mr. Gold? Nope. Okay. Let's move on to Department of Finance. Contract regarding secondary on-call repair.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm here before you this evening in reference to the procurement of a secondary on-call water and sewer line repair and construction service contract. Procurement issued RFP 0411-2022-1400 on March 10th, 2022 for a secondary on-call contractor to perform water sewer line repair. 2 proposals were received on April 11th, 2022. Staff then evaluated those proposals and ranked KL Langford the top offerer. A notice of intent to award was issued on May 11th, 2022. Attached in your board packet are the contractor's rates. Staff recommends that the Board of Directors authorize the interim general manager to issue a notice of award and to execute an agreement with KL Langford Excavating, subject to approval as to form by the county attorney. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Are you saying Langford, Langford? Okay,
KL Langford.
okay. Just want to make sure I spelled it correctly. Thank you. Any questions? Ms. Kupka?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. Can you tell me who was on the selection committee for this award?
It was a combination of service authority staff and engineering staff. Do you want me to list out each panel member? Ms. Barker, Mr. Eisenbeis, Mr. Goldman, who wasn't present for the interviews, and Bryce Young, our engineer.
And so there was an interview conducted with each of,
There was only one interview conducted based off of the evaluation.
based off of the evaluations. Okay, thank you very much.
I have some more questions concerning that. Was it a scoring system based on the evaluation? And compared to the, I guess, the primary contractor, because this is a secondary, correct? Was the rates comparable, the same? I mean, do you know anything why they picked this one over any others? Or
They're pretty comparable. We have in the procurement file score justifications that each panel member provided for the reason why they provided those scores that they did. The RFP does include evaluation criteria when it's posted. So each offerer has the opportunity to see how each proposal is going to be scored.
one other question, is it a blind scoring before you choose, or is it you see the name of the company
No, each panel member receives a copy of each proposal.
with the names on it?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Discussion? We have a motion.
I'll move to authorize the acting general manager to issue a notice of award and to execute an agreement with KL Langford Excavating for secondary on-call water and sewer line repair and construction services, subject to approval of the agreement as to form by the county attorney.
Second.
Motion's been made in second. We'll do a roll call vote. Ms. Kupka?
Aye.
Ms. Binder?
Aye.
Mr. Parker?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next we're going to move into the funding agreement on the ARPA.
Thank you. So you have in front of you the agreement that is based on the notice that we received back in the fall from the Virginia Department of Health for the $5 million that will go to water needs in the county in terms of addressing a number of our well sites, upgrading those and ensuring that, some of the ones that are due to come off will come offline. We have a series of projects that we have submitted to them that they have signed off on that's included in this document. We just received this morning. It probably has a lot to do with the meeting that Mr. Morris and I attended, and Jerry Goldman and Travis Cusenberry and Bryce Young attended yesterday. And I believe that my recommendation would be that we move with all haste because July 1 is coming up. And we would obviously like to not have any delays to this process. And the fact that we're able to get an agreement from the state, I think is a good thing. And we should allow Ms. Lackey to review it and to, have you all approve it as to form and then let her work out anything that would require some negotiation. But we just want to definitely not have any delays so that the funding will not be delayed in any way. Is there anything you want to?
I have reviewed the document. I have what I would characterize as fairly minor edits that I'd like to try to negotiate with VDH, but they have nothing to do with the contract amount or the major terms of the contract.
Thank you, Ms. Lackey. Anybody else have, Ms. Bender?
Yes, can I have, do you have like a summary of anything they added in your meeting onto any concerns or?
I have a item in my report that I was going to mention some of the things that we talked about.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
So am I to understand then I'm looking at Exhibit A and it gives the list of the projects that are proposed to be funded by? Okay.
And those were submitted to VDH in March. There probably is going to be some changes to some of those, maybe a different prioritization based on conversations that we had with the VDH folks. But most of these things have been approved by them as to form, and there might be some additional items, but this is the kind of thing that they needed from us.
And so as of right now, then Exhibit B is the breakdown of how the $5 million will be allocated across the proposed projects?
That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Mr. Parker, anything? So,
But what I may also add is that we would be happy to have at the next meeting, if you would like a little bit more fuller explanation, not that you should hold up your decision tonight, but, so that you understand where these funds are going to be allocated and how we're going to go. We're working with Draper Aiden. They're going to develop a project schedule. And for each of these projects that have to be approved by VDH, keep in mind that DEQ is also a part of this because they are another agency that we have to satisfy on especially the groundwater issues. But what would be helpful perhaps for you all would be we can get Draper Aiden here and kind of go through, flush out these projects and what they mean and what's going to all, be a part of these things.
okay. So we need to agree to this evening, or do we?
I would recommend
Ms. Lackey to address her concerns.
I have a motion for you, Mr. Chair, if you'd like, that would
go
cover
ahead.
both. So I move to authorize the acting general manager to execute the funding agreement between Virginia Department of Health, Office of Drinking Water, and King George County Service Authority, subject to approval of the agreement as to form by the county attorney.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Ms. Kupka?
Aye.
Ms. Bender?
Aye.
Mr. Parker?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. So motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And give Mr. Miller a minute here to catch up with his notes.
Okay. The next item would be is that you or is that me? Okay. Public hearing for the budget and the water and sewer rate schedule. So we need to go ahead and set the public hearing for that, which we are also then asking for this at the same time for you to approve the budget and the rate schedule at the same meeting, which is permissible. Again, we would need to have it at a different location, but we have already advertised for the rates as approved by the board. And as part of your 5-year plan, So that is in there. Do we have a shortened version of the budget just as a recap? I think you submitted that, didn't you? I don't have it. Okay. So just let me just go through this again. Two budget categories, water and sewer. Water, a little over $2 million in expenditures. Sewer, a little higher, obviously, 3.5 million. There are transfers to capital, debt service, project reserves of $1.8 million. Total expenditures that we are estimating of $7.4 million. It's an increase of about $451,000. The major increases are the water increase of about $279,000. The key focal points, 2 additional staff for the maintenance department, electrical costs, and third-party billing increases. Again, we mentioned that the maintenance staff obviously is under John Eisenbeis's authority, but the costs are shared between sewer and water. There is a sewer increase of $166,000 from the FY22 budget. The focal points there are the 2 additional staff, again, a split. The instituting an inflow and infiltration program at a much more aggressive level than perhaps in previous years. The water operations RFQ, which we will discuss here as part of my report, it's not been finalized, and we would recommend that you go ahead and approve this budget. And then once we get to a solution on that, we come back and you would have to amend the budget if there's any major changes to it. We are obviously discussing things with the two contractors that submitted information. We have meetings set up for next week. And, our goal is to get you something very quickly after the fiscal year starts. But this budget does not include that. And we ran out of time. Next. So there's a summary of the revenue. Again, total revenue is going to match total expenditures. The water fees and sewer fees, you can see the breakdown there of the difference, the different type of fees and how it all adds up. Water fees about 1.6 million, sewer fees about 2.1 million. And then obviously there's some other funds that categories that make up into the like water debt fees, sewer debt fees, connection fees, availability fees, and whatnot. This was presented to you at the last meeting as well. That it? And that is it. So our recommendation again is that you adopt this budget and then, hold the public hearing on the night of the 21st. And if everything is good, you can approve it that night. If you want to hold off, then you can hold off. But you clearly would have the option to approve it and appropriate the funds on the night of the 21st.
Thank you.
We would just need a motion, I guess, to set the public hearing.
Do I have any discussion? Questions? Do I have a motion?
So I make a motion to set the public hearing for the budget for July 21st, 5:30 p.m. June 21st, sorry, 5:30 p.m. at the Sheriff's Department.
Second.
Motion been made and second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. I just want to apologize to everybody for skipping that item. I have new eyeglasses I'm trying to get used to. Okay. Now we move on to the general manager's report.
All right. So it was mentioned, and Ms. Bender had asked the question about our meeting, and Mr. Morris obviously had a little summary of the meeting that we had yesterday with the representative from the Virginia Department of Health Drinking Water Division. His name is Mr. Doug Meyer, and he is the one who we deal with on a lot of things, and the primary one that we deal with. There are a lot of other officials, but the ARP funds, at the time I put this together, I did not know we would have the agreement, but we do, and we were very thankful for that. We had a meeting yesterday with Mr. Meyer and with our representatives from Draper Aiden, Mr. Morris and myself, and Jerry Goldman, our water manager, and Bryce Young, our principal engineer, and then Travis Cusenberry, our county engineer. And we talked about these projects that are going to be funded by ARP. And then we talked about a lot of the other issues and concerns that Mr. Meyer had identified in a letter that he sent to Ms. Kupka, who was the former chair, obviously, or is the current former chair, but was obviously the chair of the Service Authority last year. There's obviously a long history that VDH has with the Service Authority, Department of Environmental Quality have with the Service Authority. And we were told that through a number of conversations with Mr. Meyer that ultimately we need to have a business plan put together, which we have been working on since Bryce Young came on board, that we needed to have this plan in place before the funds were ever going to be released. And we kind of cried foul and said that it was kind of a last 11:59 p.m. type notice on their behalf. And he indicated that that's just the way it is. And we pushed back kind of hard on that. And he's going to accept a draft of the business plan that Bryce is working on, and we will have that in place. But a lot of this goes back to, and Ms. Bender may be able to kind of help amplify on this, but a lot of this goes back to when Aqua was running the organization on an interim basis. The interim general manager at the time put together a list of what he considered to be the water needs and worked with VDH. And then when Mr. Weekly came in, he picked up and started running with it. And then lo and behold, we had a pandemic that kind of put a lot of things on hold. The feeling, I think, from VDH is that somehow we're not taking them seriously, which is far from the truth, because I think that this board has acted very rapidly and very quickly to approve a CIP in November that was based on items that were identified back in 2019. And the discussion kind of went along about the Service Authority Board obviously had approved of these water projects, which I was not aware of. I don't know, was it ever officially implemented?
I would have to go back on my documents to give you 100% at this moment.
And that's fine. I think that was our concern, is that maybe this was presented. He didn't really have an answer to that. He kind of said, well, I understood they saw it, but seeing something and approving something are two different things. And so, we haven't deviated from any of this. It's obviously that the board has been strapped and faced with financial development of a financial plan. And I think Mr. Weekly and the board did a great job of starting us on that path. And the fact that you guys got a CIP in November is a testament to the work that the board did to get to that level, that we're able to fund some of these projects, because that would have been the issue that I think would have been a concern. And so we're very aggressively addressing this. And obviously the $5 million is a great shot in the arm. And so we're very thankful for that. But I just will tell you that I think that we know that VDH is kind of there as big brother and watching over us, and we've got to work with them, and we are. But I do think that, you know, the board should be very proud of the fact that, one, they've received this money, but two, you're not ignoring what state regulators are saying. So,
Mr. Miller, I would say we were addressing it. It's just there's so many things that were thrown out, and then the pandemic happened, and then change in leadership several times
Right.
does not help.
right. And I think that they, you know, I think that there is obviously discussions that they believe need to still happen about the service authority selling to a private system. And I think Mr. Morris and myself let him know that that's not going to happen because this current board, you guys have said you're not interested in that. Mr. Morris? Yeah.
Yeah, I brought up to VDH at one point, I said, all you guys do is hammer us. When's the last time you got something positive to say about anything we've done? And they didn't have an answer for us. And it's like, you know, a little encouragement goes a long way, guys, instead of beating us all the time.
So VDH was interested in us selling is what I'm hearing. Well, their opinion. Would that be a fair statement?
Yes.
Because I will also have to throw in, because I pushed back a lot about this in 2019, and people don't realize that, you know, we're in one of the most heavily regulated areas in the United States because of the Chesapeake Bay Act and all these mandates and nutrient limits, which are important, but they come with a price tag to achieve. And until this time, it was sort of like do it and find the money.
Well, you also are in a district that your groundwater withdrawals are heavily regulated as well, and we have to be very cognizant of that. I think that overall the conversation was significant. I think he had asked for a response from his letter of the 16th of May within 30 days and indicated to us that our meeting with him was his response. So that's the level of what you deal with sometimes with these folks. But anyway, we are working on that. And as I said, what we will do is we will have, I will get at the next meeting a little bit more fuller treatment of the actual projects that we want to have the ARPA funds go towards, so that you see where the money's going in terms of the various wells and the improvements that we have listed.
Mr. Miller, with that business plan, to satisfy VDH2, is we have a plan of accomplishment, because I know we had that at one time of a timetable.
Right. And a business plan, there's very specific things that they look for, and it's a very comprehensive document. And so what our folks will be doing is working directly with them along the way and getting, buy-in and saying, look, we like this, this is good. So I think that everything will work out. But it was kind of a shock, I think, to Mr. Morris and myself and the other members. We were told that, you have to have a business plan in place to receive these funds, when in fact there's nothing in the agreement that says you have to have a business plan in place. And it would have sure been nice to know that back in September when you received the document. As I said, it's interesting that they are the ones that advocated that we put to give us $5 million to fix our water system, to improve it. But yet then they're the same ones that are saying you got to have these things, that we're not going to let you do things until you get the funds. But I guess that's how it works.
Well, they admitted to us that this business plan is a requirement in the regulations, but they selectively enforce it. And it's like, oh, well, why didn't you tell us that 8 months ago?
Right.
That you were going to enforce that on us at the time, when in the past you've never brought it up, and they didn't have an answer for us.
The other thing that I will add, and it kind of addresses the third issue up there, the ARP funds, we also met with there is a third party that VDH hires. It's another engineering firm. And we are working with that gentleman. We had a meeting last week to kick this off, and he will be our rep that we deal with for. He certifies everything, and whatever, and as the projects unfold. So we had that meeting, and that's a good thing as well. And what he indicated is that we probably need to, I guess the word I would use, the phrase I would use is let's put a pause right now on the merger, because it was indicated to us in our meeting with Mr. Jeffries as the third party, that if you count the money that the King George County has received in ARP funds, which totals about $5.2 million, and the $5 million that the service authority received, if you merge those funds, it puts us into a higher category that then would require some different ways of accounting, different ways of meeting like Davis-Bacon wages and things like that. And so it makes it a little bit more complex. We're not saying that I'm not proposing that the merger idea be stopped entirely. I think that we need to just wait and get a clearance. And that could be something that's done in a month. That could be something that's done in 2 days or whatever. But I would obviously come back and talk with you all about that. But I think right now, we certainly don't want to jeopardize receiving any funding to help the service authority based on some proposal to potentially merge. So that's the issue. The next item on there is just an update on the wastewater operator contract. So again, I mentioned that we have two proposals that we received, two firms that submitted their qualifications. We met our team met with each of them, and then we are now asking for more information, and we're going to hold interviews that are going to get into a lot more of the details, the specifics about how they would propose to run the organization. And so we will hopefully have perhaps a report that we can give you at the next meeting, but it most likely will bleed into the first of the year. And so that's why I think we didn't want to obviously include that in the budget, but it will be something that will have to come back and be looked at. In the meantime, what I'm proposing, as you remember, I made some moves internally to move the previous superintendent of operations. I put him in a planning role. And so what I'm proposing to do is get that position filled. You then would be in a position that if that's the position you want to use, if you wanted to stay as a separate service authority, that person could potentially be your general manager. Or if that position were to be if the move was to merge it under a county utility, that person could be your department head. So not obviously advocating that I stop doing your job for you. I'll continue to do that as long as you want me to. But I do think that it's time that the folks down there have somebody that they can go to all the time. I certainly try to make myself available to them, but I think that they're needy children. No, I'm kidding you. They're great people, but they do need somebody that could be there and 100% of the time. So that would be my recommendation, and I'm going to get that sent out, and we'll go from there. The last item I would say is just COVID is still around, and I'm going to explain that obviously not explain, but I'm going to mention that to the Board of Supervisors that we are meeting as our COVID team meets on a regular basis because of the fact that it's out there, and we need to make sure that our employees are taking all the precautions necessary and that the employees are doing everything that they can to not, contract it, or if they get it, that they can, be isolated or quarantined, whatever we need to do. So, yes, ma'am.
Well, I have a question back on the superintendent. Are we going to get like a little blurb? So I'd like to know exactly what's in the advertisement.
I'll be happy to provide the job description. It would obviously be, yeah, I'll get that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a clarifying question? So what you're saying is you can advertise for this superintendent of operations, and this person, based on the qualifications, would also be able to function as our general manager?
if that's the decision and the direction that the board went in.
So,
But I would recommend that the superintendent of operations do the superintendent duties, and I could continue to be in that role as the interim general manager unless you guys don't want that. But, let me do it and have the superintendent be somebody that's there, that, the true function of a superintendent is not necessarily to be your general manager. It's to be in the field more and working in that. Well, dealing with operational issues is different than dealing with strategic issues and dealing with the board issues, things like that. So I would continue to recommend, staying in that role.
so,
And you have.
but you think that this person could also supervise the staff and be a day-to-day manager?
If we
of the
look for
staff.
the right one, yes.
Okay.
That would be my.
Because that's what I'm looking for here, because I think I agree with you as far as there needing to be more boots on the ground oversight over at that facility. If we can find someone who can do both, I would be amenable to that. But I don't think we can. We have a lovely arrangement with you, and I very much
I'm
appreciate
happy to stay
what you
in
did
it.
for us in our time of need, but we need to press forward with getting a permanent manager. That's my opinion. That's all I'll say.
My two concerns is the scope of what their duties will be, who they report to, and, having too much higher paid staff. What are we doing? We shouldn't have two. That puts a lot of drain on our budget.
Well, and again, the unique situation that you did with me is you didn't take a lot from the general manager's salary. I mean, you took a small amount, and so that funding is still available to utilize. There's also a manager of the wastewater that has never been filled. It may be filled, but you have those funds. So there's a good amount of money that could go towards a position like this. The main thing was to get somebody boots on the ground, like Ms. Kupka said, and then you can deal with how you want to handle the rest of it. But I have absolutely no problem serving in the capacity that I'm in. I know that, but I do believe that it would be helpful for me, and it would be helpful for the board and helpful for the organization to have that position filled and, to truly run it the way it should be run in terms of a boots on the ground superintendent, that is out in the field.
I get that, but my other concern is, where do we go with a position like this? Do we have them be somebody who has the technical knowledge with a licensure, or do we have someone who's more a business-oriented person?
So the one thing I think that may have been a flaw in terms of the decision-making years ago was that the position didn't maybe have the background of a water operator or a wastewater operator, or somebody that had that background. That's one avenue to go in. It's not necessary. In a lot of ways, what may be needed is a drill sergeant type person. And I'll use that term. I mean, you need somebody that's like a construction superintendent, that is like when things are, where does it all flow? It's right there, and the directions come out of there, and things like that. So, and I would have the position report to me if I'm going to continue in as an interim role. And I just said that as a way of saying, look, if you went in the direction of a department, then that position, if the person is the right position or the right person, then that person could be your department head, who would, if the county and the service authority will merge. If you don't and you stay in the role, that person could, hopefully we hire the right person that has the skills that could be the general manager, if that was the direction you wanted to go in.
I think what we need to see on this is the KSAs for the position, and then the required qualifications and the desired qualifications, and I think that would give us a better handle on your perception of this person.
Sure.
And how they would work in the organization and work in conjunction with you. And then we can move forward and fine tune it one way or the other. But I definitely think it's something we need to move forward on, and let's get the rest of this data and stuff. And
So here's the one thing, right? We're interviewing two people to possibly run, or two companies to possibly take over some kind of more functional operational management. I'm not super eager to jump on that position until I know what those proposals come through as, because that would be something they would essentially be doing. That's they're kind of a supervisor position. So I would hate to hire somebody and suck up money that could be thrown towards general manager.
I think that's a good point. And I just want,
I'm not saying no, because we do need more a management structure. I just would love to see what the proposals are from the two companies,
okay,
or whoever wins the contract, what their proposal is.
Okay. Yeah. And I think that's good direction. I just, I didn't want anybody to think that we were not thinking about this and that this wasn't on our minds in terms of what the employees need and all that kind of stuff. So I appreciate that, and it's good direction, and we will get back with you guys on that. That's it.
anything else, Mr. Miller? Any questions from Mr. Miller? Okay. And we've already addressed the conflict with the Board of Elections. So motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn to June 21st, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. at the sheriff's office.
Second.
Motion has been made in second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned until June 21st, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. at the sheriff's office.